Hello and welcome to the CX Files for October 26th, 2023. My name is Mark Hillary and I'm in Sao Paulo, Brazil.
I'm Peter Ryan in Montreal, fresh back from Tbilisi in Georgia. Great trip and a wonderful visit with some amazing BPO executives. But as we're coming to the end of the month, Mark, I have to ask, do you have your Halloween costume picked out?
Well, I actually made a mistake in that I bought a big pumpkin, like a 6 kilo pumpkin, early in October and carved it and put it out on my balcony with a little tea light candle inside it. But it only lasted for a few days before there were flies buzzing around. So I'm now just now, as we're sort of really getting into the last few days before Halloween, I'll probably go out and buy another pumpkin. But yeah, I'm probably going to hit with the extra charges for waiting so long now.
Well, at the end of the day, Mark, I admire your enthusiasm. Growing up, Halloween was a huge event in Canada, and I know that it's very similar south of the border in the United States. And we would prepare for weeks on end, buying costumes, getting our masks ready, thinking about what we would be wearing when we went out trick or treating, planning the routes that we would trick or treat. But I was under the impression that in the UK, perhaps when you were growing up, it wasn't as big a thing. Is that the case?
Oh yeah, when I was growing up, it wasn't really big at all. I mean, no one really participated in Halloween. There was a bit of trick or treating, but that was more because it would give you a license to go and chuck some eggs at somebody's car or something. It wasn't so much that Halloween itself was popular.
Yes, chucking eggs at cars or homes is certainly activity that I bear absolutely no memory of whatsoever in my youthful days. Let me just put it that way. Nonetheless, it is a fun time. And does your little one have a plan or for any costumes or for any trick-or-treating this year? She's getting to
Well,
that age.
yeah. We'll find a costume, definitely. Probably a witch or something like that. Because she's got a favorite book, Room on the Broom, which is which is a witch's book, and she loves that one.
Right on. I haven't read that one, but it's one I'll have to make sure is on my Amazon wish list. But Mark, let's talk a little bit about the pod today. And who are we going to be speaking with? What's the subject?
Well, we're actually going up into Canada. We've got a guest from
Oh
near
dear.
to just outside Toronto. Um,
Oh,
yeah, sorry. No one from Montreal, I'm afraid.
big rivalry between our two cities.
So it's Dianne McCoubrey, and Diane's in charge of sales at Grypp. And Grypp is a technology company that is trying to bring video into contact centers, which is, an interesting concept. We've certainly got much more used to video calls over the past couple of years. Certainly since the pandemic, everybody's become familiar with Teams and Zoom, and it's very, very rare these days to be on a conference call where you can't see the other participants. So I think that, what Grypp has been doing is asking, why are we still making phone calls into contact centers and we're not able to get any kind of visual aid during the calls? And what's interesting about the solution and the ideas around this is that it's much more than just being able to see each other. What they've kind of done is created a way of sharing information. So for example, if you're calling your bank because you're struggling to fill out an application form online, really what the system allows is for you to work on the document together or work on the app together, this kind of thing. So you can share what you're doing at that time with the agent, and not only see the agent, but be able to share the process of whatever's on your screen.
Well, I mean, to my mind, there's significant application for this. Think about the number of times you might have been stuck, or I might have been stuck filling out an insurance claim or filling out a medical application or documentation related to the healthcare system or pharmaceuticals, whatever. I think that the ability for an agent to work in real time with an individual that's looking to try and complete documentation has got an amazing level of applicability. I think that it would be a game changer. And from what we're going to be hearing about today, truly, I think is going to be revolutionary in regards to what it can bring to the CX level for a lot of organizations in a lot of different spaces.
Yeah. I mean, this is cross industry.
Yeah.
This is talking about how do customers interact with agents in a way where the agent can actually see what the customer is trying to do, and so they can be much more helpful. I mean, a good example is, during the conversation, Dianne talked about a banking contact center where one of the key complaints was not so much from the customers, it's more from the agents saying, I spend all day on 45-minute phone calls where what I'm doing is saying, can you see the box on the top right of the screen that looks a bit like this? And so you're constantly kind of describing forms and documents rather than just being able to kind of point it out immediately. So, a 45-minute call where half the time is directing the customer can just be dropped down to 5 or 10 minutes because you can immediately kind of work on the document together. So I think that, as you say, that there's a real opportunity for a game changer here in terms of agents really being able to help customers.
Yeah, no, definitely. This is going to be a great discussion, Mark. So why don't we go straight to it? Because in my mind, this is something that I believe a lot of our listeners are going to see an immediate level of applicability, as you say, not necessarily in one vertical, but really, I'd say the cross section of them.
Definitely. Let's go straight to the interview with Dianne McCoubrey from Grypp. Hi, Dianne. It's great to get you on the podcast. Now, I heard about your company because I was judging the Engage Customer Business Awards, which I know the finals is actually going to be next month. So I'm not going to say how I judged your company, but I guess the fact that I invited you on the podcast means it was at least interesting. So, but yeah, the final result is a blend of several judges. So I'm not giving away anything here. But I think that before we sort of kick off and talk about video, which is going to be the subject of this podcast, maybe it's best if you just give a short introduction to Grypp. Peter and I have been talking a lot about video sharing recently and how it might change customer interactions, but it'd be great to hear what you're doing first.
Right. So Grypp really is helping to transform the way that agents service customers through the voice communication method. As you know, that there's many ways in how you can connect with an agent. But when we're working on voice, there's ways to improve that communication. And so what we're doing is bringing the visual and the digital engagement to improve that process for both the agent and the customer. And as we go through the podcast, we'll get to talk about that a little bit more in greater detail.
No, that's perfect. No, it's better to have, just a short, direct introduction rather than, you give me the half-hour presentation, like with PowerPoint slides as well, Well, exactly. I mean, in this industry, we've seen broadcast video developing really quickly. We see social media influencers doing demonstrations. You can go to TikTok and buy the products that you're seeing. And we've also seen kind of like high-end white glove service as well, sort of using video. But do you think there is now a much more general possibility of using video interactions just with kind of like more regular contact center agents then?
Yes, absolutely. I think video is applicable in many areas. So we have a lot of verticals that use our platform for video and other features that we'll talk about later as well. But if I look at banking, for example, and there's an agent that's speaking with a bank representative and they're talking about the personal banking information, maybe they're completing a mortgage. If I want to convert that and make it a more personalized conversation to help build trust with that customer who's providing confidential information, turning on that video capability allows me to interact, build a rapport and trust with that customer while getting the customer information. So instances like that, I think video is really important. We can look at technical support. So maybe I'm having modem issues and I call into my service provider and I can turn on video to help troubleshoot that. So instead of scheduling a truck roll that maybe, there's a technician that can't come out for another 5 more days. Well, what if I turned on the camera and allowed the technician to troubleshoot in advance? I could probably resolve that issue on the spot. So having that video capability is great. They can also troubleshoot, maybe find out that the modem's not working or that there's parts that they need to order in advance of that call. So it improves that process along the way. But there's multiple areas in where video is applicable. I think in healthcare, it's a big opportunity, telco, banking, finance, insurance. Insurance is really critical. Think about it when I'm reporting, an incident, an accident. If I can turn on my video and show the agent the damage that has been done to my car, for example, or my home, that helps reduce the friction. It helps improve the average handle time, first call resolution. I'm providing more information, leaving less for the imagination when the agent can see what I'm trying to describe, really.
Yeah. So it's not so much just being able to see each other. During the pandemic, I think everybody got used to Teams and Zoom and video instead of those awful kind of conference call things you put in the middle of the table. But so we've all got kind of used to video calls. But I think from what you're saying, it's more to do with that kind of interactivity. So being able to screen share, being able to say, I'm trying to do this on my app. Can you show me exactly how to do it? And I'll share it with you. That kind of thing then, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that it's important to clarify what video capability means, right? So when I'm on a voice call, I may need to turn on my camera where you and I are actually looking at each other. But there may be a situation where we don't need to look at each other. If I'm troubleshooting, it's just the customer needs to turn on the camera so the technician can troubleshoot. Then there's the ability to screen share, as we were calling it, in co-browsing, which is a really critical feature that we have, which is the customer's shopping online and they're stuck. They're not able to process a payment. There's an issue going on or they need help. So if I can engage that customer to be able to screen share or co-browse together, well, yes, we're seeing what each other is seeing, but it doesn't mean we have to be on camera and show ourselves. But what we're visually doing is showing and helping to remove that friction where words just sometimes aren't enough. And if I can visually see what you're referencing, it's going to make that process so much smoother and better. So there are other features for sure that screen sharing, just being able to visually show something could be perceived as, a video call.
Yeah. I think that's interesting because there does seem to be this confusion about when we say video support, we're kind of assuming, it means I can see the agent, and so exactly. I think it's important to redefine that, and so it seems that it's becoming like halfway between that video call where I can just see you, but there's no sort of value add, and a person, like being there in person. I mean, if I just bought a new television from Samsung and I'm trying to set it up and the controls are too complex, or I just can't get it to connect, the smart TV to connect to the internet or something, I could phone and then they would be telling me instructions on the phone, like go to this menu, do this. But what you're saying is like we're kind of going halfway between having an engineer right there in person helping me and the normal kind of call support. Instead, I can actually have someone visually that can see what I'm trying to do with my TV and really help me immediately.
Exactly. And I think people, after the pandemic and during the pandemic, we did go to video, right? So that is what ended up happening. Everybody started going to video. And then the issue became that they went online, right? And then the issue became, well, I'm not really getting serviced. I'm not getting the help that I really need, right? Because we took that personalization out. And so what we're saying is put that personalization back in, help the customer feel like they're actually shopping with your brand in the store, but not in the store. Now they're in person. So how do we bring that to life? And that's the big component of what Grypp is really doing in that transformation area, is making the customer feel like they're actually shopping with the agent, with the support team live, but not. So it's a really nice experience, actually.
Yeah. And how does it work for, say, like regulated industries? I mean, what if I'm trying to complete a mortgage document, and I've got a problem and I call the bank and then they say, well, why don't you share what you're trying to do, either the document or the app that I'm trying to complete? I mean, are there more controls around that kind of screen sharing?
Right. So I think it was about maybe 7 years ago, a lot of banks were using co-browsing features. And they actually stopped using co-browsing because it didn't have the security in place that needed to meet the compliance regulations, right? So they removed that out. And really what the component is that, we put back in is the ability to mask critical information. So maybe you don't want your agent to see the customer's debit card number. Maybe you don't want them to see their social insurance number. There's critical information that you don't want them to see. Well, with Grypp, we actually mask that information. So even though the agent and the customer are working together, completing a mortgage application or maybe applying for a credit card, whatever that might be, there's certain components in that we can actually mask and protect that customer's privacy, now making it compliant. And so from that perspective, there's huge savings in there. So I'm going to use an example. I was speaking with an agent who actually works for one of the banks, and he was saying to me, Dianne, sometimes I spend 45 minutes on a call because I'm trying to describe to the customer on the right-hand side, you'll see this word and you've got to click on it. And then the customer doesn't really see it and they go back and forth and the customer is extremely frustrated. The agent obviously has to keep its composure and patience to still try to explain. And there's just this massive gap. Well, if I can see what you're seeing, now let's navigate through that. And I, as the agent, I can actually click on the forms, right? I can click on the form. I can help fill out that form for the customer, making it easier for them. Filling out forms isn't easy for everyone, right? But as the agent, if I spell something incorrectly, the customer can see that you've misspelled my name, right? Okay, let me fix that for you. So they can both interact and make changes at the same time, making that process so much smoother and quicker, right? So instead of taking 45 minutes on a call, that call can now be a 10-minute call. Great experience. You moved on. Customer is happy. And now the agent is able to, service the next customer. So I think that's probably where it's really applicable. The other part is terms and conditions. So in the banking industry, terms and conditions, sometimes they're read 2-3 times, depending on what activity is being happened in the bank. So when you read out a term and condition in the banking industry, it can take 3-5 minutes to handle a term and condition. Now imagine, we estimated that's about 53 cents per minute that it's costing the agent. And they're spending 4 to 5 minutes on that call. And then you get, let's just say eight calls per day, which is way more than that. And they have 500 agents. You're talking a huge cost. Like it's going to cost a bank, let's just say $10,000 a day just to go and read over terms and conditions. Well, with Grypp, if I was to take that number and amortize that over the year, there would be about a $2 million savings in just visually showing terms and conditions online instead of reading them out, right? And then on top of that, the customer now has a copy, an audited document of the terms and conditions that they read so they can reference it back, which is something that they don't get when you're reading it out. So significant impact in the financial industry for sure.
Yeah, sure. So you're literally just sort of showing them an image of all the T's and C's and saying, do you agree on that? Click here, yes, no. And then the image can be filed away so the customer can go and look back at it.
Exactly. And we can even take it to the next level. I think we've all been in that situation where there's a term and condition, and then there's a clause in that term and condition that it says you have 30 days to return this to get your full money back. And if you don't, you don't get it. Well, the agent can even get the customer to initialize that they've read that part, because that's a critical part to that term and condition, right? And so that improves the customer experience where they don't feel like, there's this hidden information in the term and condition. Of course, I'm not going to capture that. Well, let's bring that to life and let's just make that, experience a better experience for the customer. So that's what we do.
Yeah. I mean, we're seeing a general kind of increase in expectations from customers right now. Especially since we've seen the generative AI come, it seems like chatbots themselves are really starting to improve, because last year and the year before, chatbots were just fuel for stand-up comics to crack jokes about how bad they are. And so we're sort of seeing, self-service is getting better. The experience with bots is getting better. I mean, is this part of that wave then? Because I think that if my bank was making me spend 45-50 minutes on the phone to fill out a form, but then I talked to my friend and they said, well, my bank, you can do that same kind of thing in 5 or 10 minutes. Then I think that, that would definitely redefine my expectations.
Well, and that is what's happening, right? If you go to a bank or an insurance company, eventually people get educated and they see the difference in experience. And once you've had the elevated experience, you now know what bad experience is, right? And so I think when you see the banks, when one bank does something great, everyone else follows suit because everyone wants to have the same kind of elevated experience. And I think you're going to start seeing a lot more banks, insurance companies, and retailers moving forward with this new way of doing business, right? And they had to, even with the chat box. not maybe 2 years ago, you'd get on a chat box and you'd go in a vicious circle and never get an answer. And it'd be so frustrating. And, you look now 2 years forward, a year forward, and chat box has evolved so much. It's fantastic. It really does help improve a big part of that, customer experience. So I think it's important that we're all elevating and, making sure that we're able to service the new customer as they are today and what they are going to look like in the future. So for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and you mentioned like feedback from an agent that was having problems, even trying to describe the right hand corner, click on the top, question that you can see on a form. Have you heard feedback from agents that are using the video version then? Are they definitely, is it improving the kind of experience of the agent in the contact center just as much as it is for the customer?
Absolutely. So we have it in two kind of parts. When we first introduced the solution to agents who are already in this frustrated situation where they can't really service the customers because they're not empowered to have the right tools that they need to be able to do that job better, right? So the first reaction when we introduce them to the possibility of Grypp, everyone gets excited and they're like, oh, this is going to, remove so much friction. And all these customers that are yelling at me for things that I can't control, I'm going to be able to remove that. So we hear a lot of excitement of people wanting to move forward with the solution. So the adoption rate is fantastic because they have their own KPIs they need to meet and can't, right? And then when they do go live, then they're really excited because they actually see it working, where customers are happy. We do like an NPS score at the end of the call where the customer gets to rate the agent in the call. And we see the ratings going up. People are genuinely happier about the service. And I think they're happier because we all know we've all had really bad service. So the moment you see something where you're like, oh, this was so nice. I like this experience. It was great. I had a customer who actually called. He wanted to use our platform for his company. And I said, oh, okay, great. I always like to, how you hear about us. And he says, I was actually using your platform with, he was booking pods. Actually, that's one of the customers that we have. And he was scheduling, those crates to move the storage crates, the pods. And they were using our platform. And he loved the experience. He was like, this is so great. I want my customers to actually have that same experience. So that's the best compliment you can get when someone else calls you up because they loved the experience that they had, right? So.
Yeah. No, I think that's interesting because normally we talk about this kind of technology and change from the perspective of the customer. But I think it's interesting to get this kind of feedback from people who need to use a system like this for their own company, or even that kind of employee feedback from inside the contact center, that they are actually finding their job much easier and they're getting less frustrated and they're finding the customers abuse them less because of this. So they must feel a lot more supported as well then.
They do. And I think that the challenge that we experience right now, it's been, hundreds of years where contact centers are being serviced the exact same way over and over, right? So I think a lot of agents don't even know what's really out there, right? We all know what chat box is because that's picked up quite quickly. There's a lot of things that have picked up quickly that people, are already expecting, right? Grypp is a new concept to a lot of people. So there's a lot of customers, there's a lot of companies that don't know who Grypp really is yet. But the moment they hear about it, they're like, wow, this is like the art of possibility. I didn't even know this existed. So I feel like when Grypp really starts getting out there and a lot more customers start hearing who we are and what we're doing, you're going to hear and see a lot more people demand that they start getting, using a platform and features like ours to really help elevate that customer experience. Why wouldn't they?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because last week the Washington Post ran a story saying that contact centers are finished, and effectively AI chatbots can just take away 99% of all customer interactions. And I think
there's no way.
Yeah, I mean, clearly anyone who sort of works within customer contact knows that that's not going to happen. Certainly not in the short or medium term. But there is this question of how can we do it better, because we've been doing it this way for decades.
Yeah. And I think that's right. Like, it's funny, people will say, AI will take over it all. But I mean, how often would you personally want to be serviced by AI in everything that you do? The human does need human interaction, right? But I think what it's doing is it's elevating and saying, I understand that customers are going to want to speak to a voice at some point because there's some pieces of a problem that you need to be able to explain it or describe it or whatever that might be. And a voice is you need to actually interact with an agent. But what that agent needs is the ability to service that customer faster, better. So can you embed AI into that? Absolutely. If you can embed AI in that and help the agent know what image to share first, what document to share, what that next step could be, then you can move that process a lot quicker and faster, right? And that's part of what Grypp does today. Grypp helps the agents better learn products. Like, I think what we're seeing is a lot more customers outsourcing agents, and everyone's reducing costs. What does that mean? They outsource and they go offshore. So what happens when you go offshore? Then you're going to get two things. There could be a language barrier, a bit of a dialect disconnect, which can create some friction, frustration. But there's also a learning curve, right? Because now it's not an associate that's working in a store per se that knows the product in and out. Now you're having to educate that agent on what that product is. So being able to embed AI and Grypp and what that next process is, and help them understand what that flow of communication should be, making sure that I'm sharing all the right information about that product. And in order that makes sense to the customer, that allows you to still meet your KPIs, so you can increase sale, convert more customers, or resolve those issues faster. That's going to be important, right? And so we just talked about terms and conditions. If I can turn every single call from a 4 to 5 minute term and condition to a 30-second, and in banking, every single call is a terms and condition, well, there's huge cost savings there, right? And you're improving the customer experience. So it's just, where is it applicable, and making sure that you're applying it to the right scenario.
Yeah. And I can see a number of different industries where this could really kind of move the dial on helping the customer. But does it matter? I mean, let's say that, I've got a 200-300 person contact center internally. Would it be difficult to roll out video like using your product, or would I need to work with a BPO, or does it matter?
Well, it doesn't matter. So our customers can go direct to us. We obviously have a team that can implement. It takes about 4 weeks for us to implement into a contact center. And I say the majority of that part is more about the training and getting people comfortable about when to, introduce a feature, or how to do it, or whatever that might, whatnot. But it's about 4 weeks, maximum 6 weeks. We do work with a lot of BPOs, and part of that is because a lot of our customers work with BPOs and they like that service, right? It's not just about technology, it's about the process and the people, right? And so if I have the technology, I need to make sure that I have a process and people to be able to execute that properly for it to work. And BPOs are really great at doing that, right? They have a massive infrastructure behind themselves that really bring a lot of that technology, people, and process to their customers to really ensure that they're getting the KPIs that they're looking for. And so we have some great partnerships with some BPOs. But again, there's some of our customers that don't outsource at all. And if they don't, that's okay too, because we're happy to service them and provide them the process and people, and obviously the technology as well.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting for anybody selling any kind of customer service tech that probably 3/4 of customer service interactions are internal and not with BPOs anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So I just think it's important. I mean, technology is evolving greatly, and it's about understanding where that pain challenge is, and then making sure that you're providing a solution to the problem. And that's really, I think, the core of where Grypp kind of came into place. They understood that there was this big pain challenge, and they already had the history and the technology and the knowledge of bringing the digital and the voice digital visuals to the voice. So it just made sense to bring it into the contact center because it's a huge gap, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, it's an exciting time, and it's going to continue being exciting. And I look at elevating that customer experience, because every time I'm on a call and I get a bad experience, I always think this is an opportunity for them to get better. It's just an opportunity for them to get better, because there is stuff out there that's better that they could be using. And so it's just about, the awareness, bringing, the knowledge to the customer.
Yeah. Well, I always see Peter on his LinkedIn, as an expert analyst in customer experience, complaining about specific brands he's had to interact with. So there's people out there that are doing this as well. I mean, just to close out then, what's coming up for you guys? What's coming, because we're in Q4 now. So what are you sort of planning for 2024 then?
So for us, Mark, we work really closely with a lot of our customers. We always want to make sure we're ahead of the curve and understanding what are the pain challenges that customers are facing, or what do they anticipate that they're going to be facing next. And so we work really closely with our customers to, build out features that are going to help. So we've got one amazing feature that's coming out. So you're going to have to stay tuned because we don't, want to let the cat out of the bag. But we've got some really great technology coming out that I think is going to knock people's socks off. And it's just going to elevate Grypp to that next level. I feel like we're already at that level, but it's just going to take us one more level ahead. And I think it's going to excite agents to be able to use the platform. I think it's going to give BPOs a competitive advantage to be able to improve that experience and their service offerings that they offer to customers. So I'm very excited actually to hear how that unfolds.
Thanks for listening to the CX Files podcast. We really appreciate your feedback and suggestions. You can reach myself, Mark Hillary, or Peter Ryan via LinkedIn. Please also leave a rating or review on your favorite podcast provider, as that helps more people to find us. As always, we'd like to thank Chris Haig at Traction Media for the CX Files graphics. See you next week.